I thought that was a very important part that he put in there, that he hopes people will not misunderstand this as an act favorable to religion. Right. Because I think a lot of people, when they hear this, we're a Christian nation and, you know, it's good that we're having Christianity introduced into schools, kind of takes us back to these good old days of the 1950s and, you know, everything is just wonderful and this is favorable to our church. What are your views about that?
Well, I think, of course, Reverend Gaddy said it best, but, you know, it's clear that the majority of, certainly not all of, but the majority of the members of the Texas State Board of Education is pushing through a clear ideological, you know, representation of what we believe is a misrepresentation of the First Amendment and what it means, and also what the founders intended. You know, we as an organization choose to use the phrase separation between the boundaries of and institutions of religion and government. Many people use separation of church and state. Certainly, that was the wall of separation was the phrase that Thomas Jefferson uses. And, you know, often people on the right point out that the separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution. And of course, they're 100% right that phrase is not there. But really, what gets lost is that phrase and separation between religion and government. All of this is just shorthand for the premise, the belief, and the message of the First Amendment, which is there to protect the right of everyone to worship or not worship as they see fit, and to prevent the government from becoming entangled in religion, in creating a state religion. You know, the Establishment Clause is there and completely, you know, refutes the notion that we are a Christian nation. We can't be a Christian nation. We have the First Amendment that says that, you know, the government can't establish a religion of this nation. And that's what enabled religion to flourish in this country, and what makes us unique in the way that we protect religion and protect government from being at odds, and enables each to flourish in such a unique way.
Well, exactly. And one of the things that they did was to, I think somebody either in the audience or maybe one of the board members, one of the Democrats, had suggested, well, why don't you at least put something in the curriculum to help students understand why that First Amendment was placed, and they decided to strike that. So in a way,
it was a I forget the name of the board member, but there was a board member who I have the text of the amendment here. It would have required students to examine the reasons the founding fathers protected religious freedom in America by barring government from promoting or disfavoring any particular religion over all others. And one of the board members, in explaining why the amendment should be struck down, said that this board member said that they didn't believe it was historically accurate, which is, you know, a little bit scary.
It is. Well, and then they decided, now there's a, you know, on the State Board of Education site, you can look at the changes, but I didn't see, they had like red line versions of all the months, you know, that were preceding that final vote in May. But I couldn't find the red line version of what the final. But what they did say was, this came from the Texas Freedom Network, examine the reasons the founding fathers protected religious freedom in America and guaranteed it free exercise by saying that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And then I emphasize this, then they say, and compare and contrast this to the phrase separation of church and state. It's almost like they're trying to say that these are two very different concepts.
Right, and I believe that amendment came from Don McElroy, who is a longtime member of the board and is certainly a member of the board that has, you know, a far different view of what the founders intended and what the First Amendment actually means from what we would argue is the historical view of what all of this means. Well, so it's really a shame, and that now these two concepts will be seen as separate when really the text of the First Amendment and the phrase separation of church and state are all part of the same goal and the same concept.
Exactly. And, you know, it seems to me that our Supreme Court justices can interpret that a little bit better than high school kids, you know, these people on the board. But, you know, just the extent
not all
of them love this. Well, that's true, through the mouths of children, right? But there was this one lady that's on there had published a book. Her name is Cynthia Dunbar. Mm-hmm. And she published a book called One Nation Under God, How the Left is Trying to Erase What Made Us Great. And some of the things that she has said are just absolutely alarming. And this is somebody who, you know, has been leading the board in prayer and, you know, influencing these decisions. And she says Christians should occupy all nations. And this was done before, you know, President Obama took office. But she says President-elect Barack Obama's pro-choice stance on abortion is the same sort of fascist, supremacist attitude exhibited by Mussolini and Hitler. Public education is tyrannical, unconstitutional, and the Satan-following left's subtly deceptive tool of perversion. And parents who surrender their children to government-run schools are throwing them into the enemy's flames, even as the children of Israel threw their children to Moloch. And what just blows my mind about that is that, okay, so this is somebody who's saying that the publicly run schools and public education is satanic, basically. And don't send your kids there, but I'll sit on the board and govern how these satanic institutions are run.
Right. And, you know, this is also part of why, you know, in addition to reaching out to textbook publishers, our members in Texas also wrote to the state legislature, and I know that Texas Freedom Network, which is really a phenomenal organization, has also been pushing for this as well. It's why, you know, this process really needs to be taken out of the hands of politicians. It needs to be put back in the hands of educators and of historians and of experts, and not people with, you know, who are motivated by politics and ideology, but people who really have history and facts in mind.
Well, exactly. And there was a poll, and, you know, some of the guests on the show are actually going to be from Texas, and we're at some of the rallies.
Great.
And we're also going to be talking with people from the Military Religious Freedom Foundation who are aware of, you know, the motivations of some of these board members also. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I was going to point out, you know, in other parts of the show, which I'll do, is that the majority of Texans agree with what you just said. They don't want to see these people with a private agenda forcing this type of thing on their children. And I think that it goes beyond just Texas. A lot of people have been concerned about that those textbooks may be used in other states. Like 28 other states may buy the same kind of textbooks that are published by Texas.
Yeah.